Hey guys, this is Brett Young, Taylor Young, and Rod Erb, and you're tuned in to the Be Extraordinary podcast with Erb and Young. Real conversations about business, leadership, and personal development. Welcome back to another episode of the Be Extraordinary podcast. This is Brett Young, and I have my brother and business partner, Mr. Taylor Young, with us today. We're missing Mr. Rodney. T.Y., how you doing, man?
Doing well, buddy.
Dude, good to see you. We get to rip on something really fun today, which is a kind of a special topic, specifically to Urban Young and to the three of us. And we're kind of in that season right now. So I wanted to kind of unpack some of the different philosophies and ideas around some of the things that we just talk about with regards to recruiting and hiring, and get your feedback and maybe get some of your opinions on kind of where we at. I put up a Facebook post the other day, and it got a lot of traction, which I thought was really cool that people responded to it. But it said we're looking for players, not positions. And it's the idea that, you know, a lot of times as whether we're staffing a company, whether we're a manager looking to hire a team, or we're just in general looking to fill spots, you know, we go from hire to hire to hire to hire. And most of the times I hear people that are saying, I need to hire a salesperson, or I need a customer service person, or I really need an operations manager. And this idea of looking for a position, it's almost like running to a fire drill, to a fire drill, to a fire drill, to a fire drill. And I know we're fanatical about looking for the right fit and the right person, and the positions are kind of easy. And if Rod was here, he'd give this analogy, which I'll give it for him. And I forget which movie it's from, but it's a kind of a perfect segue to this conversation in regards to, there's a movie, and I forget which one it is, but it says, you know, the coach says, what position do you play, son? And the player goes, whatever position you need me to play, coach. And, you know, that to me is the epitome of getting the right type of person on the bus. That's the person that's looking for not the position that they hold, but for the greater, bigger overall purpose. And if you can find those people, it's almost as if the positions become irrelevant, and it's magical. So kind of wanted to unpack that, get your opinion on that, and kind of where we sit right now in our season.
Yeah, you know, and I also think just, you know, how do you define a player, right? Like what you're looking for. And I think that's different for probably every organization, every business. But I think what I'm aware of is, as you compare it to sports, right? You have some, say, college basketball, right? John Calipari's made a good living on recruiting the best freshmen in the country every single year, right? And most of those freshmen come in and they're gone immediately after, or they're gone shortly after, right? But usually in his ecosystem, they don't necessarily stay, develop, and juniors and seniors within the system are leading his teams. So it puts an extreme amount of pressure on those teams to have to get it together really, really quick, because they're not coming to the system, they're not developing within the system, and they're not navigating to become later on veteran leading teams and stars throughout. So, and lately, you know, in that particular example, those teams have struggled to win. And, you know, I think it's very similar in business to say, you know, if you're always having to replenish and go after positions and look for the top talent in marketing and sales, the top talent in customer service. Number one, it's very hard to compete, right? If somebody's a top marketing and sales talent, they're going to cost more for that business to get them over, right? Because they're going to have a need that's manufactured for them to make a leap. And it may be that they're unhappy, maybe they're lacking culture, but at the end of the day, if they're a top person that you say they are, then they're probably paid very well, they're earning money, and they have experience within the thing, meaning they have more value to the marketplace. So I think about that when you're hiring positions. If you can go after players, right, and you can go after the understanding that these are good human beings that share your values and have ambition to grow within a thing or an organization, okay, well, one, you can probably compete a little bit more in that space because you have people that don't want to put the time in to train somebody.
Meaning you have a greater likelihood to be able to recruit them over.
Sure. Yeah, it's not an arms race. It's not an arm race for the highest bidder.
Right.
It's simply you're opening up an opportunity to come grow within an organization. And for that trade, you are going to pay them competitively, but you're also going to mentor and develop them and teach them the business. So that's what I think about players' first positions comes to mind, and how much value that gives the player that says, I don't know what I want to do, but I want to get on a team to grow within it. You hear that a lot in hiring. But then also as an organization, so many different positions open up: customer service, marketing, sales, project management, whatever it is. And you don't necessarily know who's going to be the right person for that job. And you constantly got to have people that are developing, that when those open up, you at least have the opportunity to fill them with those players.
Yeah, that's kind of it's sometimes hard to have that long-term perspective, because it's just every week it's crazy,
Right.
and you're missing a slot, or maybe you're overstaffed, and sometimes you're understaffed, and you rarely ever have an equilibrium, right? It's very rare. And if it's equilibrium, it'll only be that way for maybe a couple months. It seems like that if you have a growing company. But what is the mindset that somebody, that they're listening to this and they go, okay, that makes sense. But what is the mindset that they need to have, or that would be helpful to kind of start that process? Because it sounds like to me you're not going to do that overnight, right? And when I hear you talk about the having basically inventory, we talk about it a lot. Having a virtual bench, right? You should have a virtual bench, meaning there are individuals that are not on your team yet, that are kind of in the pipeline, just like a sales pipeline. Mm-hmm. But then there's also this, what you're saying is you should have an inventory for your existing staff, your existing team members, right? And so if there's new positions that open up, your first thought should be, who within the organization can fill this spot? And then I'll go towards the virtual bench or the job boards and all the other things that we look for. Do you think that's a learned skill? Do you think that is an idea? Do you have to have a good team first before you can think that way? What's kind of your thoughts on that for someone who's kind of looking to maybe adopt that?
Yeah, I guess I'd ask the question, as we ask ourselves too, is your organization set up to attract and develop future leaders? And if so, how? What mechanism, what culture, what environment, what platforms are set up to allow somebody to plug into a system and be squeezed up by the environment, right? And to rise to the occasion and be given the tools, the investment, the mentorship, the opportunity to grow as a professional, as a person. And I think if you can answer those questions, then you can recruit into that, right? You can sell that dream because it's a real dream. Mm-hmm. There's real things that back that tangibly.
Right.
And then also, if you have a current inventory of players in your ecosystem, same thing, right? Are you taking inventory of those that have shown initiative, that have shown ambition, that have done more than what you've asked them to do, and then reaching out and pulling those people along and giving them something to follow, giving them, that reinforcement and that empowerment to grow. Because I think that's what you're after. I think in our business, in this season specifically, you're not looking for more bodies, right? You're looking for more of the right people, and also with a certain baseline level of training too, specific to roles that are really key that open up, because there is, and that's when it's challenging, because you do have to get ahead of it. Because if you say, hey, we have a leadership role, and you have somebody that has shown great leadership qualities in recruiting, and they seem like their background would indicate it, but they have no experience in your industry or within your company, it's very tough to bring them in from the outside with no industry experience and no company experience and put them in a position where they're now leading other humans within your company.
Right.
But if you would have brought them on 6 months, a year ago, with the intention that you've defined them as somebody that could lead something, now you have the ability to make that decision, if that makes sense. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think that's, I think it's, you're playing chess, you're thinking ahead. I think it's, but also I also recognize I think it gets a little easier when you have a little bit of bigger company. I think if you're a smaller business, it's challenging too, right? Because you're not able to set those pieces up ahead of time sometimes. So, but I think you hit on a good point in regards to creating an environment that squeezes people up, right? Like I think one of the things I think we do pretty well is, when we're onboarding somebody, I mean, the reason that they're here is not the position that they're getting hired or recruited for.
99% of the time.
Yeah, it's and even if you took the job board situation, you're on a recruiting board and you meet somebody through an ad or whatever. And we did a lot of them. I mean, I can count on one hand probably within the organization that's happened. But the idea is, are you framing the conversation? Are you framing that onboarding with the idea of what entails in the future for this? Or are you framing it in regards to, hey, here's the job? And if, in my opinion, if you are not framing onboarding somebody in the beginning to what it looks like broadly, you're limiting the scope of what that person's going to do. They're not thinking about a leadership position in the future. They're not thinking about maybe laterally going to another department. They're not thinking about the opportunity that lies beyond just the job that they've been hired for. But if they come in with the notion of you're being hired and recruited to be, let's just take Urban Young, to be with Urban Young, not the position, I feel like it just gives you such a wide range of opportunity with that particular person because you're just not limiting them. Yeah. And I think it's exciting for them because they look and go, man, I could do anything. I could go anywhere. This is just the start. But man, just because I'm in this department doesn't mean I couldn't start over in this department and I could come back. And it just gives you a lot more flexibility. And when you need to fill a position like that, usually it's because there's a real need. It becomes a problem, right? The longer it goes that position is not filled, the more pain more than likely is going to be occurring. So 2 things. Number 1, it's easier to fill that position once you have somebody already on the bus inherently, right? That's a very simple transition. They have a better understanding of your culture, your mission, what you believe, how you do things. They're going to be up to speed a lot quicker. But then also secondly, usually if they're filling that position, it's more than likely a promotion or an opportunity that they're excited about. Mm-hmm. So it's a positive reinforcement to the organization, which creates energy, which creates excitement, which, just like you said, reinforces the dream, reinforces what you're about. Mm-hmm. But then the last part is usually when the position that they're leaving is an easier position to recruit into.
Right.
So if I have an entry-level position, that person did a really good job, and I have another position that's opened up that's not entry-level, it's harder to recruit to that position, like you said, outside the organization because they got to learn it. Then they got to learn all the normal things of just being here. But then secondly, and I shouldn't say secondly, but if I'm promoting from within and I move that person to that role, that entry-level position that's now, I'm having an entry-level position that's open instead of maybe my higher level skill set position that's open.
Which is an easier problem to solve.
Which is a much easier problem to solve. And if you can think of it in a sense of rinse and repeating that, it is a very scalable solution. I know for us, that's how we recruit. We recruit entry level. And there's just very rare situations that we don't do it that way, period. No matter what position you hold.
Regardless of the experience.
Regardless of the experience, regardless of the person, right? We've had individuals that have led hundreds of people, and they come in and they start in an entry-level position. Now,
they may not stay there long.
We've made it very clear that they weren't going to stay there long. Because if they're going to stay there long, then they're not the person we thought they were, so it's not going to work out anyway. Mm-hmm. We're framing it correctly. But also, you have to start where you start. Mm-hmm. And usually that next person was promoted. They fill that spot, which is the entry-level spot, and then the process repeats.
Right.
They're ready to be promoted. They've done the deal. They have 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is of experience. They're ready to move into the higher level skill set. And again, now we're going to recruit and fill that entry-level position. So the point I want to make here is that we're continually rinsing and repeating the same position, not different positions. Right? Most of the positions within the company are coming from individuals that started here because they wanted an opportunity. But the only position, not to say only, but the primary position that we're doing is an entry level position that they can be that they can contribute right away, that we've developed onboarding for, that we have much more training for that position because we know that that's a person that's brand new. So instead of having to hire, recruit, and train 6 different positions, really what we're doing is we're recruiting, hiring, and training one position, and then moving that base of team member all over the organization.
Right. And that's really well said. With the exception of you are going to stumble along people. We've been fortunate to stumble along people that have experience within positions that are outliers that come in and are able to do higher level positions right away, like marketing and sales, because they've literally done the same thing in another place. And you go, great, like just come learn our system and you're plug and play and we'll, support that success, but you're not building a whole business around it.
That's the thing. We've also had agents who have experience in the field, right? Doing the actual craft, the same thing that we do, just differently. And they've been able to come in and I won't say skip the process, but go right into the role, right? So, but let's be candid, they've struggled. Those people have struggled because we've deviated from our system and our process. Now, that's okay because they had the experience and they got up to speed, but it wasn't like even those outliers that present challenges from not going the regular track. Totally. The most success that we've had consistently is doing that track every single time, no matter what the person is.
That's a great point.
And what's interesting about that is that, like you said, you're always going to come across those people, and there's always outliers. But is that the system for scale, right? Because in order for you to do something great and build something worthy of being modeled and doing something that has substantial impact, you need a good amount of people to do that. Yep. And so we're not talking about recruiting 1, 2, 4, 10. We're talking about recruiting a lot of people. That has to be a system. That can't just be every week I need something different and I just need to find it somewhere. But that's how most people recruit.
Yep. And I think back to where we started, it's like define what a player is for you, right? That's going to mean different things, right? Does that mean that they share values? Does that mean, somebody that I like to talk about in recruiting? I think the number thing you hear from people is they want to grow within an organization. Wherever they are or where they're looking to be, they've either capped out or they feel like there's a ceiling on their path, right? And I know for us, we believe in, and we've had people within our organization, literally like employee number 1 now is doing his own thing within our ecosystem, right? So it's a path to unlimited that we harp on in recruiting a ton because it's what we believe in. It's what we've done. It's what we've seen team members come in and do, right? And that's fun to talk about, but defining what that player is for you that fits your system and making sure that your organization and the culture and the values that you have actually solve the problems that prospective team member is, or that prospective employee is looking to solve, right? If somebody comes in here and they go, hey, look, I'm not really looking to grow. I was kind of looking to see if I could make more money. I haven't looked in a while and I just wanted to see what's out there. Well, that's conversation is probably not going to go anywhere in our ecosystem because I don't feel like that's a problem. If you solve it in the short term, you're not going to win in the long term.
Well, that's not the problem that we're solving.
Right. That's so we can't solve their problem.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be a like, hey, thanks, but no thanks. Let's keep in touch. Yeah. We're not a fit. Right. But if somebody comes in and they go, you know what, I've been at this place for a couple of years. I'm getting started in my career. I just don't know what I want to do. But, here's kind of what I've done. Here's the skill sets. Here's what I think I want to do. And I'm kind of willing to try something and learn something, but I want to grow within an organization. Man, that's a fun conversation. You can recruit a very broad audience that feel that same way. And so I mentioned this, and I think in the insurance industry, and I think a little more the old school mentality specific to customer service is like, well, I've had Sally for 20 years in customer service, and she's great. And, my clients love her. And man, if I could just find another Sally, right? She's been here 20 years. She knows how to do everything. I just need to find another Sally, and I need to look for another Sally. It's like, I just don't, like you said, I just don't believe you should look to build a business around Sally because how many Sallys are there?
Yeah. And you're just, what are you going to wait a couple years until you find one? So you're going to limit your growth by how many Sallys you could find.
And that's where I think it's fun to talk about the players versus positions, to say, if you can put yourself in recruiting a player's mindset, you can develop people on the way that can potentially become that person,
right? Or
they can go another route and help you solve multiple problems within your organization. Because I know for us, man, there's positions that they come up all the time. Yeah, and you're looking at it like, can this person lead people? Like, is this person equipped to develop into the type of person that could take this position? And you're hoping you've done enough and they've done enough that you can say yes to that question and have a mutual fit in those higher level roles.
Yeah, and I think like one of the biggest one is problem solving. How many positions have been created that didn't exist, right? And especially if you're a startup or you're a smaller business and you're growing or wherever you're at, hopefully you're growing. And when you grow, you create opportunities. And some of the coolest stories inside of our walls are positions that weren't not there, but we created them because all of a sudden it became a need. And then you look around and go, man, it's not like you have a draw up on exactly how this position is supposed to look because it's the first time you've ever done it. So you're looking for somebody that you can go, who's willing and able and wants to be able to build this out, right? And then you're identifying who those people are, right? And you go, man, you know what? They've shown significant, ingenuity, problem solving, high level critical thinking, tenacity. I'm going to give them an outcome and then let them kind of scope what this kind of looks like. And that's happened a lot. And so you can imagine how long it would take and how much more friction it would be for us to scope it ourselves, figure out exactly how it looks, put an onboarding together, put together a training, all the stuff that comes with that, and then go try to find it.
Yeah.
And then bring them in, and then they don't work out. Then you go try to find another person, and then you bring them in. Hopefully they work out. And you could think of how long this process might take before you're actually getting into even productivity in the role that you're trying to create. When somebody's internal, you know their character, you know their work ethic, you know their abilities, you know their the things that they're not necessarily polished on yet. You know what you're getting. So the risk is reduced significantly when you want to create some sort of new position because you know what their capabilities are, rather than this is what the position should do and I'm looking for something outside. And that becomes not only is it risky to do that in general, even if it's a position that you currently have and but now you have a position that you've never done before and you're finding a person that you've never worked with before.
Well, and there's a cool part that you just mentioned about if you find the right player and they can help you build it out, right? Also, you mentioned that if that player moves out of a lower level position into a higher level position, they can also help find their replacement and train their replacement. Because if you're equipping that person on how to attract their own talent, how to recruit, and you're creating an environment that people want to be a part of, you can start to have those players, and that's how you can potentially grow exponentially and not linearly to where you're talking about, where it's just like, I'm going to build out, fill a position. I'm going to build out, I'm going to fill a position. That doesn't scale as fast, right? Rather than I'm going to find people that I'm going to build out, fill a position, and then they're going to build it out and help me fill other positions too along the way. So,
and also to be fair, I think these concepts are still relevant, even if there's other organizations that don't want the newbies, right? They want the seasoned pros, and their model is go get experience somewhere else, learning the craft, and once you're really good, you can come over here.
And we'll pay you for it.
And we'll pay you for it, right? They usually will pay more, but they don't hire new people.
And a lot of attorney, there's I remember, I had buddies that were lawyers and get out of school, and it's like everyone wants experience, but like you got to start somewhere.
Right.
So people go to firms, they get experience, and then they make leaps to bigger firms typically.
Yeah,
right?
and that's okay. That's your model. But knowing what I like what you said, knowing what problem you're solving, knowing what your value prop is. Like in sales and marketing, we talk about a value proposition all the time. It would be crazy to go into the marketplace and not know what your value proposition is. You're making cold calls and you have no ability to express why you're different and what problem you solve. You're not going to have much success. But with the way that you recruit and the way that you hire and the way that you staff your business is a significantly important factor, and not everybody's the same. But I think the way we approach hiring and recruiting is so shotgunned a lot of time. We don't take the time to say, what is the problem I'm solving, right? And you're talking about, we're taking somebody that doesn't have any experience, but is a great person, and they could grow into a path to unlimited, and they're going to get all the training and resources to be able to do that, right? I think that's cool because there's not a lot of firms that want to do that. There's not a lot of firms that want to take the time to be able to do that. Now, you might have a different model, and you might say, no, that's way too much. That's way too much effort. We'd rather just overpay people for all the stuff that they learned at all the other firms. Well, then that works too. Sure. But at least you know what problem you're solving. And at least that's a scalable solution, right? That is a scalable solution. If you're willing to pay more than anybody else is, and because you have a mousetrap that's able to do it, that's scalable. You're going to have a high level conversion with recruiting, right? That's very simple. But there are inherent challenges with both. But I think it's important to go, what is your value proposition for recruiting? What is your value proposition for getting people on the bus? And what can you deliver to them that is beyond just the scope of what comes in a package? And if you can answer that question, you not only will have consistency in your ability to find and place and recruit and develop talent.
Sure.
But you'll also keep yourself from running from fire drill to fire drill to fire drill.
There's also like a risk reversal aspect, like specific to our business. There's some firms that, they say, hey, go get licensed and then we'll hire you. Right. And then, a lot of times we'll come in and say, hey, there's plenty of unlicensed work that you can work on in the next 30 days and we'll help you get licensed, right? It's a little bit of a risk reversal, right? We'll take that risk reversal, we'll make it easier on you, we'll bring you in our ecosystem.
Yep.
And for that, we'll invest. And then we'll put the pressure. I think the interesting part is you put the pressure on the organization to make sure that you are delivering on that promise that you're selling, meaning you're growing in a way that there are opportunities for people to move up and out. And you are creating success stories. And that's a big part of this is success stories of these players that come in are vital to recruiting. I mean, they are so vital and so underrated for somebody to be able to look across and see somebody who's not known or not the person that's recruiting them and say, oh, wow, Brett started here and he's here. And his story relates enough to mine that I could see myself in him. That makes more of an impact than any package you can give somebody, in my opinion. So
I think it takes that, and that's I don't want to assume, but I have had conversations with different agency owners and different business owners. That is a scary thing sometimes, because you're making a promise that inherently you don't know if you can deliver on. Some people. And that means it requires you to grow.
It does.
That means it requires you to invest. That means it requires you to grow past the scope of your current business, because now you're in the business of creating opportunity for others, not just for yourself.
Right.
And that is an important thing to wrestle with, because you have to be willing to sign up for that game, because that's what everybody's looking for. But there's a reason that it's hard to find. Because usually, a lot of the time, the company is there to have a certain type of margin, do a certain amount. Anything beyond that, we're not really interested. Is the idea of opportunity for team members, in my opinion, what I've found is secondary to the success of the business, and or the person who's running the business, right? And so for you to not flippantly, but say that, I think it's important for people to listen to say, man, it's okay if you go, man, I don't know, I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. And it's like, hey, man, that's the business you're in. In my opinion, that's the business you're in. You're in the business of biting off more than you could chew and then figuring it out. And like, that's the deal. Because if you're not creating those success stories, be careful.
Have a bigger problem.
Also be careful going down that road, because that's not the problem you're solving. If you don't want to sign up for that game, that's obviously not the problem you're solving.
Yeah, and you can be a producer somewhere, and maybe your position doesn't require you to hire and scale with the inventory of human beings that we're talking about in our business. That is literally the number one problem. It's funny, sometimes in our business, you get so distracted sometimes of all the things you can do, the things that you're doing well enough, but more so stuff that you're not doing well. One of the things I'm proud of, but one of the things I'm reminded of is like, what is the number one problem you're solving, right? And the number one problem in our business is being able to attract young quality talent and be able to, when they come to the organization, that they develop into leaders and they have enough opportunity to essentially stay within your organization.
That's starved in our business.
That's starved, right? Yeah. So if, we've kind of, and I would encourage people to potentially work backwards from there. If that is a similar problem in your business, which, look, any business owner I talk to, talent is if it's not number one, it's number two, right? And it's right on the top. So it's like, if you work backwards and that's your number one problem to solve, what within your ecosystem could you do today, this week, this month, this year to support that thing? And as long as things come back to supporting that thing, then you can create something, special and invite people to come on that journey with you. So
what do you think that's a great perspective. So you frame that, but what do you think the biggest limitation to growth is right now? And let's just take the insurance business in general, obviously for us. Like, what do you think the biggest limitation is for, an agency that, that's, less than $2 million in revenue and is humming along, but is, working at a good pace, but what gets them to $5 million?
It's a great question, man. I mean, it's cliche, but it's I think it's leverage through leadership, being able to duplicate. Let's say if you're a business owner, duplicate your efforts in a way that allow the organization to grow beyond just your personal capacity as an ownership team, as an executive team. And I think you can only do that if you have people that are like-minded, that can step in and create, that can problem solve, that can market, that can do things that move the needle without, always having your direct time involved in that. So I would say leverage through leadership.
Yeah, the big thing I noticed there is move the needle. Like you're not talking about a leader to manage and hold things in place. Mm-hmm. You're talking about somebody that the business can grow without you being there, mm-hmm. right? I would agree with that. I would agree that the only limitation to growth is leadership, and the idea that there is a limitation to how many leaders you can have in an organization is a limiting in belief. It's like with an abundance of leaders, there's an abundance of revenue. It just works. Yep. It just is what it is. People are attracted to people that are attractive, and income, revenue, return, everything in business from an objectivity standpoint is attracted to attractive people, and leaders are attractive people. The definition of leadership that somebody gave me a long time ago, it was a great definition, is my ability to get you to do something that you wouldn't have done if I wasn't there. Influence. I woke up this morning and I didn't want to work out, but Mike Gonzalez, obviously the gentleman who runs our master class and for Urban Young, amazing dude, he shows up at the house, and I was working out today, and I was like, you know what, man, you're so consistent. I'm thinking to myself as I'm getting my butt kicked, and I'm like, it truly has to do with the fact that he shows up to the house. Mm-hmm. If it was somebody else's house, they'd be more consistent than me, right? But the idea that from a leadership perspective, he's influencing me to do something that I would not do if he did not show up. Right? All of us have that, and so the ability to have some sort of magnet that pulls those people into your organization is such a ridiculous competitive advantage.
Well, and I just want to stop here because I'm fairly passionate about this because I've seen it in kind of all walks of seasons of life, whether it's sports or business so far. It's like, ask yourself the questions like, who do A players want to play with? Right? There's nothing more frustrating for an A player than to have somebody dragging ass.
Dude, that's so true.
Because, it's kind of like in basketball, right? And you're like running suicides and you got a couple guys that aren't getting it done and aren't getting after it. And the whole team has to run again or whatever it is, right? It's the same way in business, right? When you're an A player and you're giving it all and you're showing up and you're looking at leadership like, yo, this dude over here, this lady over here is not doing that, right? And you're tolerating that, right? Like you're allowing that to go unchecked. As an A player, that is not attractive for me. I look at that, but in the other aspect, if I can see leadership's walking the walk, and they don't necessarily have to dismiss that person from the organization, but they're not going to let that exist over a long period of time, that over a long period of time, that stuff's going to flush out. I think that's what we talk about, creating an environment that squeezes people up. Yep. Because make no mistake, every organization, our organization's no different. It's not for everyone. And I'd like to think we do a decent job of trying to figure out if it's a fit early on, and it becomes very clear around a lot of A players, like who's not about that life. Yeah. Like in the interview process, you may say that you have high standards and, yada, yada, but push comes to shove, you got 3 out of 4 teammates looking at you like, yo, like you're not pulling your weight. What's going on? And what's interesting is those A players, a lot of times will flush those people out without you having to get involved. And I just think, so from a reality standpoint, I think when you're recruiting players, you have to acknowledge of what standards you're accepting. Are you creating an environment that A players want to be around? What players do A players want to play with? They want to play with other A players. Counterintuitive, right? Because like, think about sports. You don't want to go and be the best player on a team and be a bad team. Like you want to go play with other good players so you guys can win. And then by playing with other great players, you're going to get better and you're going to develop, and iron's going to sharpen iron. So I think that's a real like practical example of like, if you're trying to recruit A players and develop them, but you got a bunch of C players that aren't developing and you're letting it exist, those A players are going to want to leave.
Damn, that's a good perspective. Wow. That's you could see that because like even like something as simple as playing golf with somebody that's really good. they like playing golf with people that are really good. It's like the game's different. It's more fun. It's more competitive. It's like a higher level situation, you know. So are you saying that?
And by the way, pause you.
Yep.
I don't think it's necessarily about the thing and the talent. I think it's about an A-player effort, right? I think it's an A-player attitude.
Got it.
It's an A-player team guy, team lady, right? To be able to say, like, look, this person's about it. They may not be as good as I am because they lack the experience, but their commitment, their standards for themselves, their goals for themselves are close enough where I can relate to this person.
And then, I mean, and then it's probably fair to say that in the beginning, that has, you know, you're the only example, right? So if you're trying to attract an A player, like they're going to look at you. Are you an A player? So it's probably more to have a conversation to say, am I trying to recruit something that, you know, I'm not willing to do what's required in order to play with that person?
Yeah.
It's a good
uncomfortable.
Question. It is uncomfortable.
Talk about pressure to grow the business, to make sure you create enough opportunity. But you also talk about the pressure of making sure that you're being the aspiration that you want people to aspire to, essentially. Right. And
exactly.
Yeah. And again, I come back to that as a leader. That's why I feel like high standards are important. It's not that letting things slip are going to be that big of a deal, right? That's by letting things go unchecked over a long period of time. The problem you're solving by getting involved is not the things that are happening, not the mistakes that are being made, not the, you know, lack of production from somebody that could be getting more production. It's more of acknowledging the other people that are absolutely giving their all on the mat and on the floor and are over there sweating and busting it, that they look over and they see people that are doing the same things. Because if they see enough people that aren't, you know, it's a scary, scary thing for a player.
It's just it's such a good you know, the relation between sports on that is just so huge. I mean, you look over and see somebody dogging it, you're just like, hey, you know, maybe you shouldn't be here.
And guess what? If I'm new to a thing, who do I want to learn from? Right? I want to learn from the best. Right? I want to be mentored by the best. I don't want to be mentored by somebody who's been, you know, average in a role and is just kind of hanging in, and just because you don't want to replace them because it's inconvenient. You don't want to have a tough conversation because, you know, you don't necessarily have their replacement identified. So it just comes back to that. And I just think it's important for organizations or teams that are developing to just acknowledge the reality of that, is that, yes, you're looking to attract people, looking to sell the dream and get them within your ecosystem, but you're also making sure, more importantly, that your ecosystem represents what those people want to be a part of, and that it continues to represent what they want to be a part of.
Yeah, it's almost like standards. You get what you allow, you know, and if you allow something, you're not going to be able to attract those A players. Yeah. So it's fair to, so would you say, what's the primary reason for recruiting for you? You know, what, if you had to narrow it down, you know, take the, you know, obviously in order to grow the business, obviously you need great people. Yeah. But what is when you're looking and prospecting and in the daily deal, because you are in a daily deal of recruiting, what are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, potential. I'm looking for that diamond in the rough. I'm looking for the person that has enough there, but a willingness, you know, that they go, hey, I'm willing to seek out skills and I'm willing to become more capable. I'm just willing, and I'm willing. While I'm willing, I'm looking to do it with a good attitude and a good effort, you know. And I think if you can, and like, you know, it's cliche, like, oh, I'm looking for somebody coachable. Like, no, like that matters. Like, is somebody going to allow you to come in and coach them and get them where they say they want to go? And that mutual understanding and respect and relationship, and being able to solve the problem that they're looking to solve, whatever that may be for you, that's what I'm looking for.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good way to wrap it up, man. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
That's a good chat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I know you're in it every day. I know we're in it every day. We take inventory of kind of who's on the virtual bench, who's in the pipeline, what positions are, you know, are ready to be promoted, and what people are kind of rising to the occasion. Who are the future leaders, right? You know, that's a conversation we're having a lot. You know, who and or whose is the next batch of future leadership that's coming along the ranks. So it's always good to take inventory, but also know why you do it, and that it's a continuous process, right? So that's great perspective. Good stuff today. Well, man, if you're listening to this and you know somebody that's man, maybe you're running a business, maybe you're building a team, or hey, maybe you're just getting out of college, maybe you're just getting out of high school and you're looking for a gig, and maybe you don't know what you want to do. It's kind of nice to hear a perspective from the other side of the table of what would be valuable to somebody in the market. So if you know somebody that could benefit from this, shoot them a message today. Let them know that you care about them. It'll mean a lot. So, TY, always good to kick it with you, man. Appreciate you.